Thank you for learning Siebel with the Siebel Hub. We have a unique, comprehensive and always up-to-date collection of Siebel CRM 2021 training classes. We can deliver live online and on-site training in the highest quality with the most experienced instructors. And we also offer a unique modular Siebel CRM 20 and 21 training. Follow the links in the description or on this slide to learn more and learn Siebel with the Siebel Hub. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Siebel CRM Update Highlights. It's October 2021 and we are talking about 21.10. So the release notes tell us that there are two new features. One is an integration that is now supported with the Oracle Unity Customer Data Platform on the Oracle CX Cloud, which is a new data export architecture on the Siebel side based on artifacts from Siebel Search, Remote, and CSV file-based. And on the Unity side, it's the ability to ingest the Siebel CSV data. Another feature introduced in this release is the repository version tracking. And Bookshelf tells us about the exit codes for the post-installation database update, which are now documented, so you can check, did your post-installation database update go successful or not? The renaming of the Migrated Repository after the full migration is now accomplished with a switch for the siebdevcli client, siebdevcli, and we got mouse wheel support for list applets out of the box. Yay! Other features include fixes for the LOV import service, and Tomcat 9052 is included with the update. So let's talk about some of these features in greater detail. So the integration with Oracle Unity is a great feature, and Oracle Unity Customer Data Platform, or CDP, combines customer data from any type of source, online, offline, third party, and it creates a single dynamic real-time view of customers. That's what the web page tells us. So it's a data enrichment, marketing, segmentation, analysis tool that is available in the Oracle CX Cloud. So follow the link in the descriptions for details on that. And the integration was somewhat announced in the virtual CAB meeting in July 2021. So we also have a link to that video replay in the description there. As to the integration, Unity can ingest any type of data source, including CSV data, and that's how Siebel is equipped to send data to Oracle Unity. So there is a new export feature for bulk and incremental data in CSV format. There's a new screen we'll take a look at. And the solution of Oracle is built on the existing infrastructure, like so often. The infrastructure being the Siebel Search functionality, so the support to define search engines, which can index data. And the search data processor is the business service that is used for bulk and incremental export. The incremental export is facilitated by the transaction processor component, which is part of Siebel Remote. CSV can be exported just to a directory on premises, but of course the key feature here is that the CSV can be picked up by a new business service to send the data directly to a bucket in Oracle Object Storage, or OOS, on the Oracle Cloud. And once the data has arrived in that Oracle Object Storage bucket, Oracle Unity can be connected to that and can start ingesting the data and mapping it to the schema and making it available across the platform. So we mentioned a new screen, which comes to life after you have done the update. It's called Administration Data Export and has various views. And we're looking at the data export settings view, which lists one export engine as of potentially many. The export engine definitions and categories you see on the screen, along with the basic settings, are delivered as seed data with the post-installation database update. And the architecture allows to leverage that data export engine for any use case where you require bulk or incremental data extraction. So it's not really limited to Unity integration. It can be used for any kind of export task. The bookshelf guides for marketing, Siebel Search, and remote allow us to define these steps and understand what's necessary to get this all running. So for the communication with Oracle Cloud, you would have to import the OCI root certificate into your SES Tomcats Java key stores. There are two component groups, Search and Mobile Sync, which carry the search processor and transaction processor components. So you have to enable these component groups on at least one server in your enterprise. There is a new system preference, enable incremental indexing, which needs to be set to true. And there's a well-known remote system preference, enable transaction logging, which we need to set to true to allow for incremental data export. For the incremental data export as well, you need to create a job template, or just simply without the template, possibly a repeating job for the search data processor. A transaction processor needs to be run as well as a component. And then you can start setting driver parameters for the export engine. There is one parameter which is called export only. So for a really fast test, for if you don't have a cloud connection yet, you set export only to yes, so it will stop at exporting the CSV files, which you see as an example on the right-hand side of the screen. So there is bulk files and incremental files having been written to the file system without being necessarily uploaded to the Oracle Cloud. There's an export button which you can press on the data export screen to test the bulk export. And for the incremental export, you do an update or insert or delete and then verify that export files, incremental export files, are generated. So here we see one other view of that new data export screen. We see the driver parameters for the Unity data export engine, which is delivered as seed data. And for a quick test, I hooked the engine up to my Oracle Cloud account. So I uploaded the private key file, entered the fingerprint, etc. And lo and behold, the data was then duly uploaded to a bucket I created for this purpose. So the whole architecture is pretty interesting as it combines existing components or business services with new services. So the search data processor either is kicked off for bulk export or it's kicked off through a repeating component request, repeating job, and then ingests the DX files generated by the transaction processor. There is a CSV export adapter service, a NEO service that produces the CSV files. And there's the OOS file upload service, which is essentially a Java business service. So the SES Tomcat is involved for the outbound connectivity to the Oracle Cloud and that uploads the files. If you have set up your Unity instances to ingest the data from the Oracle Cloud, you can start using Unity CDP with that data, but essentially either the CSV data or the data in a cloud bucket are of course available for ingestion and analysis and data warehousing, data laking by any other consumers that can read CSV data. Let's talk about another feature introduced with 21.10, which is repository version tracking. So as of part of the update, the post-installation database update gets you a new column into the SWS version table. So each workspace version can be now associated with an exact repository version. And this is where Oracle means the vanilla repository number. And initially, all these values in that new column for each current workspace and current version of any workspace will be set to 17.0 by default. And for a new installation, for example, that will be set to the latest version, such as 21.10 if you do 21.10, because then you have inherited the vanilla repository of 21.10 during a new installation as you import the master repository. But for updates, it's complicated to keep track of what version of vanilla repository you're really on. If you run the repository upgrade, of course, which is non-mandatory, then you uptake the non-mandatory vanilla repository objects, and so the new repository version number column will be set to 21.10 for that workspace that the repository upgrade creates. And once you deliver that, the parent workspace will also be upgraded, so to speak, to the 21.10 version. And likewise, you create a new developer workspace from that parent, it will belong to that repository version space. A new system preference is also introduced. Bookshelf informs us that this is for DB2 databases. It's called repver column compatibility. And the technical support applets gets an upgrade as well. So if you do a new install upgrade or run the non-mandatory repository upgrade, you will see a repository version field in the technical support applet. The Bookshelf database upgrade guide now includes a complete list for the exit codes of the post-installed database update. These exit codes are shown in the log file, and yeah, it was a bit hard before these were published to understand was it all okay or not, and now it's quite clear to see, okay, that execution failed or it completed successfully. So the different return codes are representing different combinations of either successful or skipped or unsuccessful steps. They go from 0 to 12. The post-install database update report has also gotten an overhaul here, which now seems pretty complete. So there's a clear indication of success or failure for the entire process and for each step indicated by a big green or big red thing on top and checkboxes or red boxes on the sections. We learn from the database upgrade guide that the migration, the full migration of the repository using the migration application or the related business services now no longer supports renaming the repositories by hand using SQL, which is the way you have to do it until 21.9. So in 21.10, this is no longer supported. Instead, we have the siebdevcli utility, which gets more and more exposure in Bookshelf and documentation and in our administrative tasks. And this utility now has a new command line switch called switch to migration repository. And it works the usual way. So you have the CFG file, language, username, passwords, data source like you use for Siebel tools or siebdev. Then you use the new command line switch, and then you provide the name of, and then you provide the new name of the Siebel repository, that as the first string parameter, and the second string parameter will be the name of the migrated repository. So after the full migration, you have a Siebel repository and migrated repository. And after running this command line, they will be essentially renamed as shown in the screenshot to the strings that you provide. And Siebel repository is of course mandatory to use for the recently migrated repository, and old Siebel repository can be replaced by anything indicating this is a repository that we no longer need, and we will also in short course remove it by our cleanup, which is nothing new, so we don't discuss it here. The output of the utility is somewhat interesting, as it also includes, as it actually invokes the Siebel runtime metadata publisher service, and it invokes two methods of this currently in 21.10. The first one has to do with the migration of long-running workflow processes, and the second one is the actual renaming method. So the Siebel runtime metadata publisher service got some updates too. And yes, the mouse wheel support has arrived for scrolling in list applets. So this is a great time to be alive, and you can drive your DBAs crazy by scrolling away in list applets. The scrolling unit is one page. So if you scroll your wheel by one click or so, as it's called, you go one page or record set down or up. For completeness of information, we have opened the SIF file for the non-mandatory repository upgrade, where you can see what objects are included in the non-mandatory part of the repository. So this you will have to, if you want to uptake any of these objects and their changes, you would have to run the repository upgrade. You will automatically inherit these objects when you upgrade to 21.10 from a release prior to IP17, and you will also get them when you do a fresh install for a new Siebel database. But for an update from anything higher than 17 to 21.10, you will not have these objects and these changes in your repository unless you run the repository upgrade. The update path to the latest 21.10 in our case is the same as since a few versions the MDE was introduced, so very prudent step to take a full backup of the environment, the servers, and the database before you run anything. Then run the MDE, which includes an option to run the post-install database update automatically, or you decide to run it manually, and you should run post-install database update only once per database or per environment, and of course verify the outcome using the new report and log file. Then there are some optional steps for design repositories. You would consider running the non-mandatory repository upgrade. You would then have, of course, to inspect and test and rebase or deliver subsequently this temporary integration workspace to your either integration or main workspace, and you would have later to deliver it with the migration application. That's the same is true for any configurations that you do following the configuration instructions in the release notes as to fix workflows, etc. And you also should discuss with your team what administrative changes are necessary to get to the latest 21.10. So the more versions you are spanning, like 1 year of versions spanning for, like if you come from 20.10 to 21.10, you sure have something to do, like enabling the debug server on the development environment or setting up the 64-bit Java if you use any IMAP or POP3 outbound integration. So the process flow of a development or design repository update is the green path. If you follow the green path, that's the fast track. So you do the backup, run the MDE, run post-install database update, no repository upgrade, no configurations, no admin changes, and you're done. But if you have any of the gray areas, repository upgrade, configs, or administrative changes, you have additional effort to finish the update of a development environment. The update of a test or production or runtime repository RR environment is similar as you take a backup, run MDE, run post-install database update, and if there's nothing else to do, you're done. But the something else to do could be if you have changes made to the repository, you need to run a full or incremental migration using the migration application to get the repository and the seed changes from the development to the RR. Administrative changes on test or production environments could, of course, also introduce additional efforts, such as, for example, updating DISA to the latest version to get the latest fixes and features for that part of Siebel. And if you are not yet on IP17 or higher, then it's an upgrade and not an update. So in the lower section of the screen, you see the upgrades options. So the older the version that you come from, the more complex and time-consuming the upgrade process will be. We measure upgrades or incremental repository merge at that from any version prior to IP16 in months of duration, as you have to do a lot of things to get everything up and running. But the update itself, once you are on IP17 or higher, from then on you only have to run the MDE update plus the post-install database setup to get to the latest 21. Or 22. Version in a few months. And that should not take you longer than a few days at most. So thanks for watching this Siebel update summary. Subscribe to the Siebel Hub YouTube channel and like the videos so you're always up to date on free update summaries. And also take a look into the Oracle Learning Subscription or the Oracle TOIs if you are a support customer, where Oracle also provides a lot of free content. So this is it for the Siebel CRM 21.10 update. Thanks for watching. Take care and bye-bye.